The museum opened without public warning. Once during the week and only at 6 o'clock in the evening, no earlier, no later. Any bratty excuse, such as a sluggish private jet, simply did not cut it. Only those outside the gate at 6 o'clock were permitted inside. No one knew where this giant playground for wealthy men was, not even God. And in this place, there was no God. My gods were the rich and famous, and they were merciless and cruel. There was no security here, nor staff besides me on opening day. It was a grand lawless building, only made for the top 1% of the top 1%. Our reason for lack of employees was the same reason Michael Jackson shut down a supermarket for a day visit in the 2000s. Uninhibited fun, without judgmental eyes. I did the same thing I did every opening day. Adjusted my maroon waistcoat, combed my hair, shined my shoes. At 5:59, I came tapping down the marble staircase with a spring in my step. Not from excitement, rather, a jumpiness that came from instilled fear. The museum was about to become their toy shop, yet again. And me, their plaything. This time, I could only pray that they waited until midnight before asking to see our paranormal relic displays. I could only pray they didn't let her out. The foyer was huge, towering golden pillars wedged between ivory-flavored marble flooring and a mosaic glass ceiling that let starlight beam through. With one hand, I braced the door that stood 3 men high, my other hand turning to check my watch. It was 6 o'clock. 4 pompous men and 2 posh women smugly marched in. They were all dressed in fur coats, alligator skin, diamond jewelry from head to toe. It was quite frankly comical. Not to me though, of course. I had seen it all many times before. However, there was one man at the back who didn't care to show his wealth. He was dressed in his finest outfit to visit a convenience store, blue scuffed jeans and a green t-shirt. I pondered what he did for a living, but I simply didn't know. What I did know is that within minutes the look on his face said he wanted me dead for sport. I announced, "The tour will start immediately. There is a coat rack to your left if you need to leave any belongings. I do not recommend venturing off. I must press you all follow me for the tour. However, it's completely optional." It was as if I read off a script. The route started off like any other. I led the rich brats through the left side of the museum. We walked past the history and war rooms, past the living wall, past the Mariana Trench exhibit. We housed creatures from the bottom of the ocean in there that the public hadn't seen before, inside immense pressurized titanium tanks. I liked that exhibit the most, but it wasn't time. Hallways were always hauntingly quiet on opening day. The museum's property outside stretched for miles too. So no cars, nor people, provided any consolidation for my lonely mind on long nights such as these. It was just me, the rich savages, and the exhibitions. Walking into a hallway intersection, leading left to the paranormal display, and to the right, the insect room, we had stopped. Please don't see it, please don't see it, I thought. This way, please. Why are you all stopping here? I knew why. They saw the glass cabinet that towered by the door to the paranormal exhibition hallway, and curiosity beckoned them. It was covered by a dust blanket. Only I knew what was underneath, and I knew it was best untouched. "Can we take a look at this?" a voice said quietly from behind and shattered me like a toppled vase. My smile had to be kept up. I couldn't crack at the start of the tour. That would be tragic. We will return here after midnight, once we've explored the rest of the... One of the men sternly interrupted. "We paid good money for this," he shouted. "Give us a look." I pulled hard enough at my hair. I'm surprised it didn't come out of my scalp. "Please don't make me show you. I don't want to wake her." "Yeah, give us a look," more bullies chimed in. I was no rookie to the psychological wedgie, but it was in my contract not to put up a fight. Swallowing hard, the words escaped slowly and unwillingly. Yes, sure. My hand reached for the fabric reluctantly, like it was a hot stove. I pulled the graphite sheet away from the case and flipped the light switch. The fluorescent lights popped and ticked as they flickered within the glass oblong that towered above us. The woman inside was ghoulishly tall, at least 7 feet so. If she were any bigger, her head would have to tilt to the side. Sometimes it did. Her black hair flowed onto her pale shiny shoulders like an ashen willow. Her face plasticky and silky smooth, the flesh of a child's doll. Beneath the glass cube, Mariette, 1973 to 2004. The fat man's plump face stared upward, utterly transfixed within the thin, soaring woman. How? He cleared his throat. How did she die? I thought for a while, my face contemplating and changing in the dim lighting. They clicked and blinked once more. It pains me to say this, but she was once the tour guide for this museum. My hand met the cold glass. Sadly, after a few years, she had a mental breakdown and passed away. There were a couple gasps from the rich folk. Passed away? A woman's voice from the crowd. My jaw tightened. She injected herself to death with plasticizing agents. In fact, that is one of the loopholes as to why we can keep her body here on display. Her body is more plastic than flesh and bone. The lights went out. They'll be back any second, I soothed reassuringly. That story is absurd, my man boomed. Unfortunate, sure, but woefully true, I rebutted. The other loophole being her will. She wanted to give herself to the museum just as I paused. The museum had given itself to her, and the lights inside the case came back on. My heart sank into my stomach. Clicking noises had not been coming from the lamps after all. Creaking had come from her plastic joints, twisting and contorting. Old plastic grinding against itself, like a cursed figurine. Now visible, her head had been creaked to one side. She stared, unblinking at me with glass eyes. Dampening the sheet with my sweaty palm, I narrowly managed to quickly toss the fabric, covering the glass before anyone noticed that she had readjusted her head when it had been dark. Is that it? Someone said. Can we touch her? I want to feel her rubbery, plastic skin. Sends chills up my spine, another one said. I couldn't say no, as per my contract. Hell, these wealthy scumbags could kill me for fun and get away with it if they didn't get what they wanted, and nobody would hear me scream. I had to think quickly. We shall be moving on. I extended an open hand to the hallway. This way, please. For some exhibits, I held on to the harrowing details. To feed them specifics would be like planting seeds of trickling intrigue in their minds. And intrigue led to an unsated curiosity. Curiosity always killed the cat, no matter the feline, a rich breed or a stray tom. I didn't tell the wealthy people that the doll hated her glass prison. I didn't tell them that we closed her eyelids so she could sleep. Things were going smoothly for a few hours. I let them hold and handle the child-sized beetles we had imported from Madagascar. They were beautiful and fluorescent like sunlight through crystal. I got so caught up in my presentations, I had almost forgot about Mariette's snapping plastic head. Mr. Jones, the rich guy dressed for a convenience store, clicked his tongue as he spoke. "Hey, guide." He threw one thumb behind his shoulder, pointing backward. "We're gonna go back this way to have a look at something else." I nodded reluctantly. Shoddy sneakers tapped away at the marble floors as both he and the woman disappeared down the hall. For a short time, things truly were going great. I even let one woman into the space where we held the glass butterflies. They were gorgeous insects, almost invisible to the naked eye, translucent, yet poisonous. The remaining billionaires were silently yawning. Deep down, I knew what they wanted to see. My chest tightened. At that moment, I thought that I was beginning to hate my job. From the hallway came a loud crashing of broken glass. Curiosity. It killed the cat. "Please excuse me," I muttered and sprinted into the dim alley of the museum, toward the paranormal wing. Moments after I had started running, I realized I left the doors open to the butterflies. Behind me, the sounds of shouting and pitter-pattering as the tourists sprinted the opposite direction. They were running from the floating creatures, running for their lives, running from deadly venom. It was too late. I had to keep going. My heart sank. I already guessed what I was about to find ahead. The evening was no longer going swimmingly. Around the bend, I found one woman crouched against the wall by a window. She was a ball of tears, clasping her head with her two hands. "What the hell happened?" I yelled. Her throat was glaringly tight. Her words struggled to escape her. I didn't do anything. They... I looked up. Glass lined the ground and edges of the walls, like rain had come and left the devil's hail. A few steps away, the graphite dust blanket half covered a gaping, sharp hole in the cabinet. Lights flickered from its mouth, mocking me. Glaring at my watch, my stomach knotted. It wasn't midnight yet. It wasn't midnight and somebody broke Mariette's display, and she was gone. Just like the woman crying beside me, I think my throat became tight too. "Come with me," I said, holding out one hand. We got up and we ran. We ran until we caught our breath outside the ocean exhibition and the living wall. "What is this thing?" she said, staring at the peach wall. "Don't touch it, please." I couldn't think clearly. She was out there somewhere, clicking her ghoulish joints, towering in the halls, searching for more plastic. More plastic so she could become the perfect ventriloquist doll. The doll she had become so fixated with working here. She would be a doll, and we would play with her, just like she would play with us. It looks alive. The woman reached a hand out to the slimy, greasy wall. I felt lost. I couldn't breathe. It was too much. The butterflies, Mariette, the sick rich people breaking things for fun with no repercussion. Finger-like blobs from the wall reached out back at the woman. Thick apricot worms searching for warmth. I slapped her hand away. "You mustn't touch that," I yelled. She gasped, and I realized my mistake. My contract was broken, and my head shall be on a spike. "Don't you dare touch me," she spat back at me, large, angry veins sticking out of her neck. I raised my hand to calm her. "I apologize, ma'am. This strange thing is made of living cells." Without knowing, I was back on tour guide script, despite the trauma. The very thing you're trying to poke at could eat you. "I don't want to hear it, thank you." We stood there for a while, both unable to think nor speak. I stared at the wall, unblinkingly, like watching a hot fire. Its flesh molding, changing. Peach goo flowed in waves across its surface, inviting me to look closer. Underneath, on a gold placard, the living wall. I shook out of it. Richard Jones had made it back to us. His green t-shirt was torn at the neck, his eyes sunken and traumatized. "The door's locked, guide. We need your key." I nodded. Right away, I started jogging towards the direction of the foyer. He wasn't following. "Mr. Jones?" I turned to him. Richard Jones was standing next to the woman who had been crying in a ball minutes prior. He didn't speak, only glared back at me in the dim starlight that flowed through the window. And when he placed his hands on the woman's back and smiled, I knew it was too late. He shoved her with force, the woman shrieking, and went tumbling headfirst into the gooey peach wall. Her bones snapped and buckled as blobby fingers wrapped themselves around her spine, her neck. It flowed into her mouth with ease, slowly only to pull at her teeth like it was eating meat off a rough bone. She screamed and screamed until she gurgled vile slime. The wall ate her whole, fleshy goo displaying her features and flesh wide on its waving surface. Bits of arm and mouth suspended upon a hungry blanket. Richard laughed. He laughed and laughed and laughed. For him, money did buy happiness. Horrifying, horrifying happiness. I felt sick. I was going to throw up. The wall's voice was deep and hard to make out at first. A woman's voice, deep in its slimy crevices. "Richie," it moaned. I turned to run, but I had seen he had disappeared, and I was safe. He had got the kicks he was looking for and made off with them. It was hard to block out the voice before it all stopped. I lay crouched beneath the window, blocking my ears and rocking in a ball. My heart was out of my chest, my stomach a knot. I didn't want to be a tour guide any longer. Sprinting and sprinting, I never looked back. I climbed the stairs swift enough that my thighs felt like they were going to give out. Much time passed that night in the museum. Hours. Opening nights were long and terrible. Nothing like this was ever worth the money. I found myself hiding in a janitor's closet on the second floor, occasionally peering through the cracks into the horror beyond. After some time, and when the vile people finished exploring the museum, I heard Jones crack a joke about the woman in the wall. He and the rest of the rich people laughed. They laughed and laughed and laughed all the way back home on their private jets to their estates. When it was midnight, Mariette was asleep, and I shut her plastic eyelids for her. I had glass to sweep, cabinets to repair. I had learned time and time again that nightmares were not in our walls. The horrors were within the people that visited, in their sick pursuit of amusement in the games they would play, and I was their plaything. I'm sorry they played with you too, dear Mariette. The exhibition that made me quit was the sickening consequence of true human freedom, and it was only for me to see once a week. Mariette still walks the halls at night without her glass prison. Maybe I couldn't quit. I needed to repair it to make things right. She is such a slow walk. Glassy eyes darting left and right, rolling loose like marbles. Her head pivoting left and right, aimlessly looking for more plastic, needing more plastic to please the museum, to be the perfect exhibition. Before shutting the gate, I pensively peered around the grand foyer. The museum was large and harrowing. For a moment, I wore a grimace on my face, remembering a time when all I needed to satisfy our guests was to show them insects. I had been here a long time. Tales dripped from the walls like an endless flowing tap of horror. There would be more wealthy visitors. Last week, we had an incident at the museum when venomous glass butterflies escaped their enclosures. This week, I found myself alone in the ocean exhibition room. The anglerfish circled endlessly in the abyss of its murky tank, searching for an exit it would never find. It met me at the glass interface of its pressurized prison, bumping its luminescent fishing lure against the glass. It grinned at me with thin white pencils. "Hello, little guy." I found myself staying a while in our deep-sea exhibition, watching the creature as he bathed and flicked around in his own little cube of the world. He could never know why he was in the museum, nor who put him there. Instead, he swam. He swam and hoped that just one day, the glass would crack. Just an inch. And luckily, feeding the shaggy frogfish didn't take long. The yellow fish knocked away clouds of dust along the bottom of its tank as it scurried along on its leg-like fins with the awkward gait of a geriatric golden retriever. It was hard to keep happy in this ghoulish museum, but that room always made me smile. Upstairs I went before working through some paperwork for a few hours. I'm not sure at what point I mistakenly fell into a catnap at my desk, but I soon paid the price in nightmares. "Am I pretty, Daddy?" A deep, muffled voice. Blowflies sprawled across her face that was framed with golden hair. Black winged spots covered her eyes and mouth. "Am I pretty?" She didn't sound like Sophia. The face of my dead daughter, nothing more. It must have been hard for her to speak. Flies coated her throat like popping candy, bursting and buzzing as she spoke. "Daddy, did you doze off again?" She giggled in a voice that was not her own. Flies crawled around her face aimlessly, whirring, buzzing until I swat one crawling up my arm. I woke up groaning with a jolt, my wrist pink where I slapped myself awake. The monstrous foyer of the museum still clapping with an echo. My paperwork sprawled everywhere across my table, stressing me again just as easily as it had put me to sleep. Lists of last week's casualties, notes on tonight's guests, complaints, all forms of boring. Paper unstuck itself from my arm and fluttered to the ground floor from my reception desk, one floor up. The ocean exhibition and the unconscious escapism that naps brought me was my only liberation from the museum. Though, that was a time before sleep brought nightmares. When I went to check my watch, I noticed I hadn't smacked a fly after all. A glass butterfly had become mere bits of translucent wings that coated my fingers like glitter. I rubbed my hands, and the clear fragments floated gracefully down the marble stairs in a breeze like tiny mosquitoes or dust specks, sparkling in the beams of moonlight that trickled in through the glass ceiling. For a moment, I wish it had stung me and taken me to a better place. At least then, I couldn't dream of blowflies coming out of my dead daughter's mouth. Ron and Jill and the rest of the maintenance staff had packed up and left. The bustling noise was gone. There was no more work to be done except wait for more wealthy, deplorable people to arrive. I was alone again, the only staff member in the museum, and I let my mind freely slip into a different time, a time before I was the tour guide. It was time to open shop. I combed my hair, pulled my shirt collar free from my waistcoat, and shined my shoes. Down the marble staircase I went, tapping down the steps through the butterfly dust, like headlights in fog. The clock struck 6 o'clock. The museum was now open for the evening, and only for the rich folk waiting outside. I pulled the large door open. It groaned and echoed in the museum's enormous foyer. 7 aristocrats haughtily strode inside, 3 men and 4 women clad in fancy dresses and coats. One man took a while to come up the front steps and into the museum carrying his wooden cane. "The tour will start immediately. There is a coat rack to your..." I trailed off. The girl, maybe 8 or 9, came quietly through the door in a teeny black suit. Her unsure gaze scanned the foyer top to bottom. Her eyes, large glossy globes. She shouldn't be here. I didn't see her on the register, I thought. She won't survive here. Kneeling, I spoke. "Hello, miss." The girl shyly leaned from behind the frame of the front door, her skin turning as pale as the ivory marble flooring. This must have been the first child to set foot in this god-forsaken place. And for good reason. "Which of these people are your parents?" I tried hard to keep up a warm smile. Nothing. She simply gazed at me with 2 shiny eyes under a blonde curtain of hair. "She doesn't speak, Sonny." The man with the wooden cane cleared his throat. "Didn't speak the whole ride here, won't speak now. Doesn't respond to anything at all, really. One beak-nosed snobby woman put her coat on the rack. Probably deaf." I stood thinking for a while, my face contemplating, changing in the light. Looking around at the billionaires in the foyer, they already looked ready to sink their teeth into the exhibitions, or worse. Bringing her along with the rest of the group on a museum tour was simply not an option. Fortunately for her, it was a requirement for me to understand the basics of at least 20 languages to allow for appropriate interaction with the museum's guests. This included sign language, but my understanding tended to be rather broken. I could usually only make out the main words. Kneeling again, I spoke to her with my hands. The girl gestured back to me that Mommy and Daddy had sent her to a visit to the museum, as they were called away for a business trip in Dubai. How was the flight? I gestured. Good. The big-nosed woman was very annoying. She giggled and gestured that I didn't need to do hand signs. She could read my lips. I like her already. My smile didn't need much effort anymore. It came naturally. Though, I was still stuck with the child in an unforgiving place. She was a rabbit, running in an open field under the shadow of the museum's equal-clawed exhibitions. Worse, that unsated bloodlust and curiosity of the wealthy and free. That's when I remembered a clause in my employment agreement: conduct one tour every open evening. Gesturing wide and confidently, I stood up and winged away for the girl's safety. "My apologies, ladies and gentlemen," I exclaimed. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, this evening's tours have been cancelled." Groans from the crowd. The tour clause in my contract never stated how many people I needed to bring with me. "Do not fret. The museum is all yours to explore." I extended one arm to point them toward the deep sea exhibition. "Please don't wake the anglerfish." Tapping and screeching sounded against the floor as the crowd disappeared down the halls. Starlight beamed through the windows, lighting up the girl's face. She beamed straight back with excitement. Now the tour can begin in peace. Peace was a lie, however. Unsupervised, the crowd would soon find some way or another to demonstrate that they were worse behaved than the kids standing before me. A demonstration that would likely involve death. "What would you like to do?" "Drawing," she signed. I know just the thing. Many minutes passed that evening as me and the girl began exploring the museum. Her name was Rosie, and she was very nervous about all the scary exhibitions. At the intersection between the art and music showcase, between another hallway leading to a locked door, we halted. "What is down there?" She pointed a tiny finger down the dark hall. "That room with the metal door. What's in there, guide?" "I know the museum from back to front," I spoke. "But I have to say, I've never been in there. Tightly sealed shut, no key." "Oh, okay," she gave a sulking nod. "Yeah, I know the feeling." I swiftly smiled to cheer her up as I ushered into the art and music space. It was like nothing she had ever seen before. Her bright eyes could have lit up a candle. The towering walls and ceiling of the art exhibition were flowing waves of sand that changed and hissed as they rolled. One moment, the walls painted a shifting mural of starry night. Waves of blue and yellow sand curling and shifting from one famous artwork to another. The wall to our left painted The Scream. She spread her fingers into the sand waterfall. It flowed between her digits like she had pinched salt. "It's so beautiful," she gestured, her mouth agape at the ceiling. I tapped on her shoulder so she could read my lips. "We don't just house paintings here. Take a look at these." Leaning one hand against a small glass cabinet, we gazed in. Two brightly colored shoes were sat upon an ivory silk sheet, iridescent against the changing colorful backdrop of the sandy walls. They gleamed bright enough to show their true crystalline translucency. Beneath the glass cabinet, the clumsy dancers. She wasn't truly impressed until I heartily slapped the cabinet. The knocking suddenly turned the empty shoes alive, tapping and dancing upon the silk beneath them. One dance changed to another. Another became a twirl. They gracefully ended their tango with the famous moonwalk shuffle. Wow, what are these? She pressed her hands against the glass. If she were any closer, they might have kicked her. Well, some people might have a good voice. A fantastic, fantastic singing voice. I took out my satin cloth and began polishing the glass as I spoke. Some people have the rhythm for soulful moves. These shoes right here, they bridge the gap. She was glaring at me with wide eyes. Listening with them too, pulling the weight of ears that couldn't hear. They were developed sometime between the 60s and 70s, helped push the dancing inept singers into stardom by giving them a dancing edge too. I gestured her onto the next display against one sound waterfall. For a moment, I caught a sparkle in her eye. Her hair and bright grin reminded me of my dearly departed daughter, filling me with a long-forgotten warmth. I bet I'm having more fun than you are right now, Rosie. She took a seat. What's this, guide? Upon the table before her, a small white pen lay over a graphite and ash speckled stone tablet. When I pointed to the thin edges of the black plate, she caught the stretched golden placard that said, "Ballpoint Stone." Her head twisted around at me, eagerly waiting. Go ahead, you'll see. I nodded and she turned back round. Her hand grabbed the pen. It met the plate with a blocky tap. Abruptly, the wall of sand bloomed a pale white. Save for tiny imperfections of dotted peach-colored sand that gave it the impression of an art canvas rather than plain paper. As her hand swirled upon the plate, blotches of black sand circles formed and swirled against the wall's coarse current. Draw something, Rosie, I spoke. The plate knows what you will draw and will guide you. Unsure at first, she shook the back of her golden head a few times. An 8-year-old perfectionist. In that moment, I smirked when I pictured her rolling up her suit sleeves to get the work done right. I laughed when she really did it. Is that me? I let out, staring at the sand wall. A man with brown hair emerged on the moving canvas, dressed in an absolutely dashing maroon waistcoat. Must be me. The drawing was a bit beyond an 8-year-old's range of skill. We had the pen and plate to thank for that. Though, she was doing a beautiful job showing off. Wow, I said. That looks great, Rosie. She had all my attention when she began drawing another figure. Who's that beside me now? In the sound of the towering wall before me, a gawky shape appeared that bloomed big black blobs. It looked familiar, yet terrifying. Diabolical sharp nails protruded from its lanky black arms. Rosie? Nothing. She kept scribbling away, tirelessly at the plate. The thing loomed over my figure on the drawing on the wall. The sand flowing, the creature looming, looming, looming. It was a sickening animation. One ghoulish jaw hung free over its disgusting long neck. Rosie! It engulfed my head. Thin pencil-like teeth cut through my childishly drawn throat. Red sand suddenly coughing and spitting out of the wall and onto the museum floor. Staining Rosie's shirt like bloody rain. Rosie! I grabbed her by the arm. What the hell are you drawing? She glared up at me with glossy eyes like she was about to cry. It wasn't me, she signed. I lifted her from the seat and plopped her upon the floor that was littered with speckles of red sand. She turned to the wall and pointed at her depiction of me. "See? That's you." My heart was racing. Did the museum make her draw this? And her shaky arm slowly drifted to the black figure. "That's Mr. Sleepy." I felt sick. I had tried so hard to pull her away from the mayhem. But the museum had bitten back. "Come with me," I said sternly, and she took my hand. Off we went quickly, downstairs to the indoor forest exhibition. I had to keep her safe. No more misadventures. As we left, Mr. Sleepy turned his head and stared at me with his vacant, horrifying sandy eye sockets. I didn't tell her that. We saw a few distant visitors along the way to the forest room. They roared with laughter and screamed. I ushered her along with me, holding her hand tight. For a while, things were much calmer in the forest room. I explained to the girl that it was partly an aviary and reassured her that the birds still got sunlight through the glass ceiling when it was daytime. Though, this evening, only moonlight beamed through into the museum's indoor forest. Rosie and I startled a few birds crunching the bark upon the ground as we delved deeper. "Quiet, Rosie." I gestured this time. "Yes, we have to be quiet." I pointed to a display next to us that was wedged between two well-trimmed trees. It was dark, but we managed to make out the shape of a person inside. "That tree looks like a man," she gestured. "That's because it is." Her eyes lit up as I whispered, still clenching my hand tightly. "An experiment gone wrong. We house it here so it can sleep. He's not human. Not anymore. Feast through his roots, or anyone stupid enough to get close to him. Nothing could be heard in the dark indoor forest. Only that of the crunching of the leaves as she moved to press her nose against the glass with a screech. "Rosie," I whispered, "don't make too much noise." "What's his name?" "No name." I gently pulled her away from the exhibit. "Though some guests call it the slumber ghoul. He's relatively harmless. Though one of our poor janitors fell asleep in here during one of the night's long evenings. Never woke up." Her hand tightened around mine. "They say he eats you through your dreams," I whispered. "And if you're really tired, you don't even have to be asleep to feel it happening." That was all I had to say. She pulled my arm in a hurry towards the door. "Sorry for scaring you, Rosie." We had almost made it to the back door when a couple of blue butterflies fluttered and landed on her hair. She had almost lifted one onto my finger when leaves crunched behind us. One of the deplorable, rich people had found us. He was scrambling around in the dark, reaching out with hands unable to see. His hand met the cabinet that housed the tree man. The idiot sounded a loud honk as his fingers slid across the glass. Without warning, he smashed the glass, cackling as he ran out of the forest aviary and back to the halls. Rosie tried to free from my hand's grip, breaking into a sprint to no avail. "It's okay, Rosie. The back door. Let's go." We jogged quickly through the trees, crunching bark and waking birds as we went running and running. The door to the aviary sounded a clack. Somebody was locking us in. I jimmied the rusted doorknob at the back to no avail. The door first clicked, then bumped with no groan as it stubbed to a sudden shut. It widened little enough that I swore I wouldn't be able to even fit a few fingers in the gap. "Mr. Sleepy. Mr. Sleepy is coming." "Something's in the way," I grunted. Suddenly, The girl drummed a few fist hammers on my leg. She kept hammering on the side of my leg. Rosie pouted a worried face to the artificial tree line before rubbishing her face into one of my black pant legs away from something horrible. Yonder the trees, it towered with flesh irregular and charred black like an ashen log. Its mouth hung, unhinged, wide open and ghoulish, its eyes a vacant white. It was watching us. Rosie. I held the girl by her shoulders. Rosie, it's okay. He can't get us. The girl looked up with glossy eyes. Monster, she gestured. It cannot touch us if we are well slept, I spoke. Stay awake, okay? I gave her a warm look, but it was quickly cracking. Mr. Sleepy. We shared a gaze for as long as she could muster before her eyes met the ground. Rosie, I want you to stay calm when you answer my question, okay? I had to balance my gaze between her and the thing in the trees. Rosie sniffled, then nodded. Did you sleep much on the flight to the museum? My eyes darted to movement behind us. Blackened stumps where legs should have slogged under the ghoul. Moving weighted like an unrooted oak. Every slow step it took made its torso contort with a sickening crack, as if its bone had snapped and twisted. Its mouth had since widened enough that it could fit Rosie's beautiful, ripened head inside. Rosie, did you sleep? Crack. Rosie. Crack, crack. Like a fever dream, I saw blowflies crawling over her eyelids and mouth, just like my dead daughter, Sophia. Am I pretty, Daddy? I snapped out of it. Rosie, please, I boomed, shaking her. Crack, 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 crack. I had to get her out. I couldn't lose her. Not again. I shot up from my knees, launching her onto my shoulders and bolted towards the other door. Her head bounced around while I ran, but when I steadied, we made out the ghoul. It was looming close, a mere 20 paces away. Its torso flailed with a disjointed crack in directions perpendicular to its body. Hold on, I announced, as I held Rosie to my chest. I extended a leg and launched a kick into the door. Curses under my breath could not drown out the sickening sound behind me. All I could think of was that I had to get Rosie out, and that its steps sounded like a boot meeting a snail. Get in, I said, and her shoes popped to the ground. This time, I held my kick as one shoe planted against the door. I could not open it wide enough for myself, but pressing the door with my boot made it groan wide for her to enter. For a split second, I worried about the rich people through the door and in the halls too. One long, unending nightmare. I finally broke through. The rich people who had been blocking the door shut went sprawling like cockroaches under a bright light. They cackled maniacally as they ran through the halls. Almost got you, one of the rich men laughed as he went around a bend, his voice becoming distant as he ran. They couldn't keep getting away with this. They couldn't keep tormenting me in the museum for sickening entertainment. Wait here, I told Rosie. She was a ball on the ground, shaking and sobbing. I shot up on two legs in a rush and gave chase. The rich prick ran and ran, his hands screeching against the walls of the tight corridor, our museum's greenhouse on either side. You almost killed Rosie. Sprinting, I had almost caught up with him. He was in arm's reach. Stop running. His leg caught itself beneath one foolish stride. He went tumbling into one wall before pushing off it and into another, smashing the glass and halfway tumbling into the greenhouse. Spectacles had come away from his face. Blood drained and trickled towards his scalp as he hung over the shards of the broken window. Starlight flooded in from the greenhouse and blanketed his face in a greenish hue. "Help me," he coarsely pleaded. One arm reached up at me, waiting to be pulled away from the glass into safety. Inside, Holly, our greenhouse Venus flytrap with a mouth to fit a man, twisted and loomed in the evening light. She was a ginormous, beautiful plant. Hungry, too. The man's head tilted backward and set eyes on the plant. He wriggled and wormed, trying to free from the glass that stuck through him. I reached one hand outward to lift him, then stopped myself. Rosie's smile glowed in my mind like hot steel. My daughter, Sophia, had that same smile. A smile he wanted to take away. My arm retracted. "Lift me out of here," he croaked. "Hurry!" I glared at him unblinkingly. Then, it was over. With one swift swoop, Holly swallowed his torso. Green, hairy fingers from her lips snugly tightened around his body, like mossy bandages. My employment contract has been broken, and I shall be punished. Globules of thick slime dripped from the flytrap's lips. Arms and legs burst out of her mouth as she chomped. When I returned to Rosie, I held her hand tighter than I had the entire evening. I held and held her hand all night until it was time for a ride to pick her up from the museum's courtyard. Broken glass and escaped exhibitions tended to be the majority of the damage. And for a few hours, I swept. When everyone had left, all that was left for me to do was sit at my reception table and wait for sunrise. My contract had been broken. I had let a guest die at my hand. They were always all despicable, I suppose, but that one had to die. Rosie's warmth that had gripped me so tightly dissipated hours after the museum turned quiet. Everything was cold again. I miss my daughter. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you like Rosie. There would be more rich guests to torment me next week, and there was no escape. I thought about the ocean exhibition I visited earlier in the evening. The anglerfish and I are one and the same. I love you, Sophia. Slumped at my table, I lay broken and bruised. I rested my head upon folded arms, ready to let sleep come to me. I hope I don't dream of you, my girl. I don't want to see the blowflies again. For a while, nothing. Then, something quite curious. For the first time in 15 years, the museum's phone rang.